It's always a good thing to have a former spy turned intelligence expert on speed dial, just in case you have questions about disinformation campaigns and other national security questions. Seattle resident and former double agent Naveed Jamali is here. You're the only double agent I know. So thanks for weighing in on this. You are here today in part because you're part of the Seattle Police Department's anti-swatting mitigation committee, and I want to talk about that in just a moment. But just for people to understand what swatting is and why it's dangerous, can you give us a definition?
Sure. I mean, look, no one wants to call 911, but when you do, you want to have the confidence that you're going to call, and the operator and the police are going to take that call very seriously. Unfortunately, Margaret, there are people who seek to take advantage of that, and what swatting is essentially calling in a fake threat to 911 in the hopes that the police show up with a really strong show of force. And, you know, in one case, it actually led to the death, unfortunately, of someone. So that is swatting. It's an awful, awful scourge we're facing.
And it's something that is fairly targeted. Who tends to be the victims of these swatting?
So what we've seen over time is, you know, it's disenfranchised communities. It's journalists. I mean, we've seen a change now where, you know, because of the rhetoric that unfortunately is coming out in the world, that journalists are targeted. We've seen people of color. We've seen, you know, women. It has become essentially a way for someone who wishes to terrorize a group of people as a tool, as a tactic.
Can do that. So if you're an activist, whatever, you can definitely be part of this. We have some video showing how this looks from the inside. Let's take a look at this incident. We'll talk later.
Police department, you need to come out now with your hands up. Police, get down. I need a second. Police, get down. Hold stairs.
This is the home of an activist who had a call come in from a person who said they were in Florida and claimed that there was a hostage and homicide situation there. The police were, this is in Seattle, were cognizant enough of the slight weirdness of the call that they decided not to, you know, knock the door down. But still, you can imagine if you're at home, you know, minding your own business and this happens.
I'm sure people watching this, it's terrifying to them to think about being in bed at home at night and suddenly the police, you know, armed to the teeth, come in.
And you don't know what to do. I mean, I would run downstairs to see what's going on, but maybe that's not the best thing. But who's thinking at 3 a.m.?
So to give you an idea, the sergeant who actually responded to that did everything right. And this is why, you know, Seattle, I think, is the leader in this. He noticed that something was wrong. And there was a call that came in, and exactly as you said, he assessed the situation. Frankly, he de-escalated it. And his name is Sergeant Longley. He's up for a commendation. I think he absolutely deserves it.
Thank you, Sergeant Longley.
I mean, this is exactly the way you want this to happen. He has a duty to respond and take it seriously, but you want to mitigate that. You want to balance and make sure that you're not causing something worse to happen. So he went in, he assessed the situation, but he didn't do it, you know, guns blazing, kicking down the door. And I think that's one of the things that Seattle PD and Chief Best have really been a proponent of, a real supporter of, is really training police and saying, this is a real scourge, and unfortunately, sometimes a call can come in, and you should consider that potentially it is a swatting.
There is another person in town I know whose son was home, teenage son was home. I mean, it's unbelievably scary.
It is.
What can people do if they think they might be targets of this? Let's say they're an activist in the sort of areas that tend to stir things up with the atmosphere we live in today. What can they do? Well,
you know, so Seattle again is the leader of this, and the Seattle PD has been fantastic. I will say that if you are a Seattle resident, you are very lucky that you really have the best of the best here. Seattle PD has a swatting registry where you can actually register your concern that you may be the target of a swatting. So if someone calls in and gives your address, the operator knows, hey, this is a potential swatting incident, and they will communicate that to the responding officer. So it adds a layer of protection, and that is automatic. We've had quite a few Seattle residents who've registered. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if God forbid you are a victim of this, we want you to report this. I think what we found is a lot of people are scared to report this. They're embarrassed, and part of that is...
Or they think it's going to escalate.
That's right, and we want you to go to the police department. We want police departments to take this... This person is a victim, and this is a crime. And even though in this case, no one was hurt, no property was damaged, this person's peace of mind was affected. Terrorized.
And we have less than a minute, but I just want to
Sure.
point out there was a man arrested, a 19-year-old Virginia college student arrested who was part of a ring of white supremacists who were doing swatting. And you've made the point, and I know that you just have a few seconds to demonstrate this, that this can be part of a larger terrorist kind of environment.
So if you think of that video and you think about going to that house, what happens if a state actor decides on election day to target a polling station? And they call 911, they call a fictitious threat in, and they can shut down a polling station. They can do that. They can shut down a street here. We've seen it here, whether it's a courthouse, whether it's schools. It is a real...
A stadium, a whole city block,
and
whatever.
you think about the danger to not just the individual, but to the city, to the state, to the nation, in fact. It is something that we really need to prioritize as a threat against all of us.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you. I hope you'll come back. There's so much to talk about. We didn't even get to disinformation, so we'll do that later. I mean, we're not going to actually commit disinformation. We're just going to talk about it.